This is not a video pretending I knew Oliver Tree personally. I did not. I knew who he was because my son liked Miss You. I saw the videos, the haircut, the oversized clothes, the scooter, the weird characters, the chaos, and my first reaction was probably the same as a lot of parents. What is this guy doing? Then, on Sunday, June 14th, 2026, Oliver Tree was killed in a helicopter collision over Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He was only 32 years old. Reports say 2 helicopters collided, killing everyone on board, and the cause is still under investigation. That news made Mike stop and look deeper, not because Mike was pretending to be a lifelong fan, but because sometimes someone passes away and you realize you only knew the surface version of them. So Mike started watching interviews. He listened to Oliver speak without the costume, without the exaggerated character, without the joke. And what he found was not what he expected. And today, this is not really about Oliver Tree the character. It is about Oliver Tree the person. Because sometimes we see somebody so clearly through the image they created that we forget there is a real human being behind it. And after watching this interview, Mike realized that is exactly what happened here. At first, he thought Oliver Tree was a wild internet personality, a strange musician, a guy who built his whole career around looking ridiculous on purpose. But the person sitting in that interview was thoughtful, funny, grounded, honest, very aware of life, very aware of death, very aware of pain, and very aware that the character was only one part of who he was. Oliver said something early in that interview that stayed with Mike. He said that he still played a character, but at that moment, he was just a real person. That sounds simple, but it matters. Because online, we judge people by the version of themselves that gets the most attention. The loudest version, the strangest version. The most exaggerated version, we see the haircut, the glasses, the scooter, the bizarre videos, the over-the-top personality, and we think we know the person. But we do not. We know the performance. We know the brand. We know the character. And sometimes the character is there to exaggerate something real. Sometimes it is there to protect someone. Sometimes it is there to reveal something they cannot say any other way. Oliver explained that his famous look was not random. The haircut was connected to the haircut he had growing up. The jacket had family meaning. He was taking real pieces of himself and turning them all the way up, not to 11, more like 22. That was the art. He took the things that could have made him feel awkward, the things that could have embarrassed him, the things that were goofy, and he made them unforgettable. That takes courage. A lot of people want to stand out. Very few people are willing to risk looking ridiculous in order to do it. Oliver was. He did not want to blend in. He did not want to rely on looking cool or trying to sell some polished version of himself. He wanted to be memorable, and he was. But there was always more behind the character, because underneath the weirdness, the music had pain in it. The lyrics had vulnerability. The songs were catchy, but many of them came from dark places. That is the part Mike did not understand at first. Miss You is one of those songs that gets stuck in your head. Your kids play it, you hear it online, you hear it in videos. You hear the hook enough times that eventually you know it whether you plan to or not. But when you listen to the words, there is hurt there is anger, there is loss. There is somebody trying to process something painful by turning it into music, and that is what Oliver talked about in the interview. He talked about how music saved him, not as a slogan, not as a fake motivational line. He talked about it like someone who genuinely needed it. He said that for him, creating was part of survival. When life got dark, music was there. When he had pain, suffering, and negative energy, he tried to turn it into something else. Something that made people move, something that made people dance, something that made people cry, something that helped another person feel less alone. That hit Mike, because that is the real power of art. You can take something painful inside you and turn it into something outside of you. A song, a story, a painting, a joke, a movie, a character, a video, and sometimes the thing you create from pain becomes the thing that helps somebody else survive theirs. Oliver talked honestly about addiction. He talked about trying to numb pain. He talked about losing people. He talked about dark periods in his life. He talked about getting to a point where he realized he wanted another chance at being alive. And then he put that energy into music. That matters. Because people sometimes assume artists create because they want attention. Schools sometimes they create because they need somewhere to put the darkness. Sometimes art is not a hobby. Sometimes it is a lifeline. Oliver talked about taking suffering and transforming it into something beautiful, something you could move to, something you could cry to, something that could connect with someone else who was hurting. That is a very human thing. We all carry pain, we all carry regret, we all carry loss, we all carry things we do not know how to explain. Some people turn that into music, Some turn it into writing, some turn it into humor, some turn it into work, some turn it inward. Oliver seemed to be trying to turn it into something that could help other people, and that is what makes this loss sad. Not just the music, not just the character, not just the strange videos. It is the fact that there was clearly more to say, more to create, more life to live. He was only 32. 32, that is too young. That is still becoming, still learning, still recovering, still changing, still making sense of life, still figuring out how to be both the character and the person behind the character. And from that interview, Mike saw someone who was trying to stay sober, trying to stay present, trying to understand life, trying to understand death, trying to make sense of pain, trying to create something worthwhile while he was here. That is not the story of some guy who was out of his mind. That is the story of a human being who had darkness, a human being who had good times and bad times, a human being who struggled, a human being who made mistakes, a human being who found a way to make art from some of it. And this is where the interview connected with Mike's own Stoicism journey. Mike has spent a lot of time reading Marcus Aurelius. One idea keeps coming back. You cannot control how long you are here. You cannot control every loss. You cannot control what people think of you. You cannot control whether life gives you more time, but you can control how you live while you have it. Oliver talked a lot about death in that interview. Not in a dramatic way, not in a performative way. He talked about it like someone who had truly spent time thinking about it. He had lost people. He had been through dark periods. He had seen what pain could do to a person. And he talked about trying to process death instead of pretending it was not there. That is very Stoic. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about death, not because he was obsessed with being negative, but because remembering that life is temporary can make you take life more seriously. It can make you stop wasting time, stop waiting for next year, stop assuming there will always be another chance. Oliver seemed to understand that. He talked about wanting to be present. He talked about soaking up the good moments instead of always chasing the next thing. He talked about how the process of making art was often more exciting than the finished result. The journey mattered, the creation mattered, the moment mattered. That is a good reminder for all of us, because we can get so focused on outcomes that we forget to live the part in the middle. We want the success, the views, the money, the recognition, the next chapter. But the real life is happening while we are chasing it. It is happening when you are sitting with your kids, when you are laughing with your wife, when you are talking to your parents, when you are working on something you care about, when you are taking a risk, when you are trying to become who you really are, when you are creating something nobody understands yet. And that is what Mike saw in Oliver Tree. A person who was willing to be weird, a person who was willing to make people uncomfortable, a person who was willing to be misunderstood, a person who understood that art does not have to look normal to be real. But more than that, Mike saw someone who seemed to be trying to make peace with himself, trying to grow, trying to be present, trying to take everything he had been through and turn it into something meaningful. And maybe that is the lesson. Do not judge people too quickly by the first version they show you. Do not assume weird means shallow. Do not assume comedy means there is no pain underneath. Do not assume the loudest person in the room is not carrying something real. And do not wait until someone is gone to look deeper, because sometimes the person behind the character has a story worth hearing. Oliver Tree was funny, he was strange, he was creative, he was memorable, he was a musician, he was a comedian, he was an artist. But after watching him speak honestly, Mike also saw something else. He was human, very human, and maybe that is what makes the best artists matter. They find a way to turn being human into something other people can feel. And thank you for reminding people that there is often much more behind the character than we first realize. Take a little time to watch him speak as himself. It may change the way you see him, and maybe take a little time today to be present with the people you love. Because life does not start next year, it is happening right now.